This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
Hello and welcome to Iowa. We can do better. We are your hosts, Liz Fleming.
And Sarah Bose.
And we're here because we are proud Iowans who deeply care about the state and our fellow Iowans. And it's no secret that the Iowa Republicans have kind of taken the state off the rails. And Iowans are really hungry for change and, I don't know, sanity, stability.
And as someone who moved here only a few years ago, I am very happy to be in a place where my vote counts suddenly. And I want to make it count more.
And I'm very excited to be in a state that is hungry for change that we can all participate in.
Yes.
So that's kind of how this podcast came to be. We are here because we care. We're here because we want to amplify the issues going on in Iowa. And we'd really like to make a difference. This is the place to start. Iowa, we can do better. Here's where we talk about what the hell is going on at the Iowa State Capitol, how the heck we can organize and make Iowa better, because we truly do deserve better as
100%.
Iowans. Today we are joined by very special guests, Gabriel Saldana and Erica Johnson with the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, if that's a hint about what we're going to be talking about in a little bit. But before we dive into that, let's give you a few updates on what's going on in Des Moines and beyond.
There was a city council election yesterday.
There sure was.
Because when Connie Boson was elected as mayor, her city council seat became at large, and they finally got around to filling that last night.
They finally got around to filling it last night, and there was a winner. His name, like a snake. His name is Mike Simonson. So that's that. It was a pretty low turnout for voting. I think there were about 7,000 votes total counted in Des Moines.
Even on the news were saying that in terms of, presidential elections get the highest turnout, obviously, and then it just goes down from there. And I think city council is sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of turnout.
But miraculously, so I think Mike Simonson got over 50% of the vote. Yep. Justin Lewis got about 33%. The other three candidates in the single digits for percentage. But Mike Simonson actually raised over $280,000 for a city council campaign that had 7,000 people turn out. But you know
impressive.
What? Money talks. Money wins, I guess. He is an architect, and a lot of his main contributors to his campaign were realtors
and
developers.
Developers, yeah.
So there's that for you. We got a new city council member. There is also a lot of kind of good news coming from the Iowa State Capitol.
Yes.
So the filing deadline to apply or to
get your name on the ballot.
Your name on the ballot.
You had to get X amount of signatures, get your name on the ballot. I think it was 1,800 signatures. I think it's 1,800 signatures to get on the ballot.
I believe so.
And they went through it, got their names up, and we have a lot of Democrats running, which is great.
Here's an impressive stat. I'm a numbers girly. This comes from Adam Zabner for IA. Filing deadline was last night. This was 4 days ago. Here's a candidate recruitment update. So the House Republicans, there's 7 retirements, 57 of the Iowa Republicans returning to the House, 74 total candidates recruited, 17 new candidates, which is nothing compared to the Iowa Democrats, who have 4 new recruitments, 32 are returning, 75 total candidates recruited, and 43 new Democrats running for office at the state level, which is really excited. It just shows that people are really fired up and ready to go and ready to dig into change, which is thrilling for me.
And we talked about in episode 1 the amount of seats needed to flip, and I think it's what is it?
Well, let me bring up my handy dandy
There's a
state
spreadsheet
election
for this.
spreadsheet.
Liz is not exaggerating when she says that she is a numbers girly. There is a spreadsheet.
No restraint when it comes to Excel. I'm a freak in the sheets, as they say it. Okay,
Nobody says that.
I say it. So currently, I actually don't have. I thought I had. We're currently at 36 Democrats and 64 Republicans in the House. So I think we need to flip 16 seats there.
Right.
And then in the Senate, only the even numbers are running. So we just need to flip 10 seats, which is totally doable.
That's the thing. That's what struck me during our first conversation about this, was that it's not an insurmountable number, which I think is very exciting.
Very exciting for people who know Iowa well enough to know that it wasn't always this unhinged
red place.
And I think people are very, very hungry to go back to our purple state status.
Yeah. I mean, I moved here knowing that it was currently a red state, but even Iowa is politically relevant at all presidential elections because of the caucuses, which are still very confusing to me as a New Yorker, but like is what it is. But you know, I was aware that this was a purple state, formerly a blue state, and that things were not crazy. And it just seems that in the 2.5 years since I moved here, it has just gotten more unhinged. And it's I'm very happy to sort of be a part of reining that back in again.
I'm so happy you're here too.
Yeah.
I'm a lifelong Iowan. I moved to Des Moines a couple years ago from Dubuque, Iowa. A little bit different ball game here, a little bit more people. When I say a little bit, I mean a lot of it, and a little bit more diversity.
Yes.
Which is really great. But there was a funnel week that just passed, the second funnel week of the legislature. There are some bills that died. There are some bills that survived. But first, we're going to talk about some bills that died. Tuition caps, because fuck poor kids, right? Fuck them. Fuck poor students. No, sorry, I would have really loved a tuition cap because higher education costs have gotten out of control. Birth control. So this was House File 2584. It would have allowed pharmacists to dispense birth control over the counter.
It seems like such an easy one, but, you know, whatever.
It would have been a layup, and I think it had bipartisan support, but there were a few...
that's one actually Reynolds supported.
That's one that Reynolds supported,
that one.
Which just goes to show you how out of whack and uncoordinated the Republicans are. There were a few that were adding things like pimp... What are they called? Pimp amendments. I'm not joking. There was a bill. So this birth control bill could have passed with bipartisan support, but there were 4 House Republicans or Senate Republicans nonetheless, who added a bunch of wonky little tidbits and amendments to the bill, including a form that people would have to fill out when they receive birth control to let people know that they have no connection to a pimp.
Okay.
You know, normal Iowa stuff.
That's a normal, because when I think Iowa, I think... Anyway, moving on. What's next?
I was going to say, if there's one thing I want to talk about with my pharmacist, it's my connection to pimps. Another thing that failed was defining the terms male and female in the Iowa Code. This would be very much obsessing over which bathrooms people use. And
this one's... I'm glad this one died. This is great news.
Great.
Very pleased about this one.
Ding dong, the witch is dead on that one. The unborn personhood via Republican Brad Zahn. You know what happened in Alabama, where the Alabama Supreme Court ruled that fertilized eggs are people?
Frozen embryos are people.
Frozen embryos are people, and it kind of screwed with IVF.
Yes.
Brad Zahn, you know, of harassing women fame and bringing a firearm to an airport fame, decided that it would be great if they tried to pass an unborn person hill bill like the one in Alabama, not to be confused with another Alabama,
right. Alabama,
that paused IVF and put it at risk. So Skylar Wheeler, who is a Republican from Hull, said that the bill would not have an impact on IVF. No offense, Skylar Wheeler, I don't trust you at all.
That's
so
totally
Brad Zahn, who introduced the bill, took it back because he knew that there would be potential unintended consequences related to IVF. Once more, Iowa, we deserve better than this. We deserve a lot better than this.
We do.
There were some bills that suck that survived. AEAs.
Yes.
No one wanted this. Not a single person in Iowa was gung-ho about this. Kim Reynolds is like, this is my personality, I guess. And she went full force with it.
Yeah, that one's a mess. We will get more into the Baby Olivia bill moving forward, but essentially they are necessitating the showing of a factually incorrect video about how a fetus develops to, I think it's like 7th graders through high school seniors. It's a large swath of schooling where they have to watch this factually inaccurate video. That's just horrifying. And the idea that anyway, we will get more into this one, but the Baby Olivia bill is gross.
It's gross and it's wrong. And as someone who was brought up in Iowa public and Catholic schools, I was not taught accurate information about my body or reproduction, and it screwed me over in life. There were situations that it would have been really nice to have been able to advocate for myself or have the wherewithal to make decisions from an actual factual place. instead of what I was told about whatever the hell I learned in Catholic school. Sorry about that. There's also hemp regulations. So goodbye, Delta 9. If you want anything over 10 milligrams, climbing kites, I will miss you if this is the case. I hope that this bill dies. And
I know there's a team of people fighting this one in particular, and I am also hoping this one dies because it is absurd. I think the fight against cannabis in any form is absurd. It's a plant. Calm down.
It is literally a plant. Literally. Okay. Arming teachers, because there's no segue into that.
There's none. It's just the stupidest bill that's ever existed.
The Iowa Republicans have voted to arm teachers. This is HF 2652. And on top of that, we don't have money to feed the kids, but we have $3 million to grant for a grant program to purchase infrastructure and equipment related to employee permits to carry weapons at schools.
Yeah.
I have no other words to say about that other than what the hell. And then the Religious Freedom Act, so that's Senate File 2095, freedom to discriminate against actual living people.
Yes.
In the name of the Lord.
Yes, which is, it's just and this has been said a bunch of times, but it is an open opportunity for discrimination, and it's absurd.
Speaking of open opportunities for discrimination.
Speaking of, what a good segue.
Again, we have Gabriel and Erica here from the Iowa Movement for Migrant Justice. We would like to highlight some bills that are incredibly pertinent to the conversation today. So without further ado, we have Gabriel and Erica with us, who are part of the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice, a member-based legal service and advocacy organization driven and led by immigrant and refugee voices and united with allies. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. I know there were a few specific bills that were in the pipeline or in the, what is it called? Not the pipeline. I call it a pipeline because I'm in sales.
The
funnel that were in the funnel that really would impact the immigrants and refugees in Iowa. You are the experts on this subject. We obviously are appalled at what we're reading, especially with Senate File 2340. That's still alive, correct? I think so. And would just really love to hear your take on the impact these bills could have.
Yeah, I think, luckily most of those bills died. We did have that one that survived. They came at it from pretty much like all angles, just trying to attack one specific community. And I think in the process also putting a bunch of different folks in Iowa in danger, and kind of letting people be susceptible to becoming felons just for, being a good person, essentially. And so it involved with taking away in-state tuition from Iowa residents, and just doing that to target immigrant communities, as well as kind of trying to instate this human trafficking, smuggling law that would, say that someone driving with an undocumented person would then be, knowingly, if they knowingly were driving this person, they could be charged up to 10 years in prison just for that act alone. And, that one is pretty problematic, especially with how many, organizations here that, and even like lawyers and different people, like even from the church and like schools and stuff that take people every day. And that would, change how they act every day. They'd have to ask folks about their immigration status before even like going to a soccer game or something like that, which is just to think about like a high school student, just like, okay, well, we can't take you. We have to check your immigration status first and stuff like that. It's terrible.
It's almost dehumanizing or like putting them in an other category.
Yes.
It's not okay.
And it's intentional.
Exactly.
It's an election year, and we have been having meetings with our coalition partners around the state since August because we knew this was going to happen. We knew because what's going on at the border and because it's an election year that we were definitely going to see at least this quote-unquote anti-smuggling bill, which is ridiculous because Iowa is not a border state. We don't have international borders.
That's the thing that stands out to me so much. They're like, Iowa's a border state. I'm like, is it? And
they're like, well, Nebraska?
They're like, the I-35. I'm like, oh, okay, all right.
Oh.
So they're stretching, and they're stretching because it's a proven strategy. Like in this country, politicians have always gone after immigrants. It doesn't matter where they have come from. We can look at all of these arrivals for the last 200 years.
Yeah.
People have come here and they have been attacked and demonized and pitted against each other. I'm watching the show Warrior on Netflix right now, and it's looking at San Francisco in a couple hundred years ago when Irish laborers were being pitted against Chinese immigrants.
Yep.
And this is a story that repeats, and it's like the politicians use that or kind of foster an animosity between workers, especially thriving on the idea of scarcity, and pit each other against each other and raise violence as an issue and in a way to advance their own elections, their own power.
Exactly. And I think Sarah and I are the type of people who can see right through that, but
Yes.
a lot of people can't. I mean, when they're presented with information that is supposed to scare them into thinking a certain way about, oh, these people are unfamiliar, so they must be bad, which is just so batshit to me, considering one, we literally exist in Iowa, which is stolen land. Like, we live in America, which is stolen land. Like, no one has a right to be like, you're illegal here. Everyone is illegal here, technically, if we want to go back that far.
Yes.
But just the sheer dehumanization of people who live and contribute to the community, who are valued members of the community, but because you were born here or because you look like this, you must be bad.
Right.
And it's the exact opposite of what Iowa should be. And if you look back at our history with Governor Robert Ray,
Right.
he was so... He had his flaws, but there was such a push to be more inclusive, and
and support refugees. And the reason we have such good Southeast Asian food is thank you, Governor Robert E. Ray.
Yes. It's heartbreaking, and I'm sorry that this is happening. And really, if you could share how people can best support.
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. In this moment. So last night, what happened? So the three bills that Gabe was talking about. So there was an anti-student bill that blocked residents from getting in-state tuition. There was an anti-worker bill, which made it impossible for undocumented workers to work in the state and mandated E-Verify. And then the third one had to do with benefits, blocking people who are eligible from getting benefits to getting benefits and then creating this smuggling thing. So those bills we hope are dead.
Right.
The Interfaith Alliance sent out a newsletter last week, and they said, well, it's true that bad bills may die. Bad ideas don't necessarily go away. So it's true that those ideas could be tacked on later in the session. We hope not. And last night, the House did pass a bill that had previously passed the Senate. So this is the bill that we call the Texas copycat bill. It has to do with creating or allowing a system where local police and judges in Iowa can enforce U.S. immigration laws. It's the term that has been thrown around often when we talk about this idea is polimigra, the idea that local police would be acting as immigration agents generally. And so super scary, and unfortunately it passed both chambers at this point. And so the next step is for the governor to sign it. I haven't seen whether she signed it last night, but she could have theoretically signed it last night.
Sounds like her.
It does. I mean,
She
based
has
on
done that.
her
Yeah.
views, I think that would be likely that she signed it. I will say, so as a New Yorker, the thing that stands out to me is the idea that the law enforcement can act as immigration agents, like that. It to me, and I hope that, I mean, I'm guessing you feel similarly, is that this opens up options for harassment, racial profiling. It seems very similar to stop and frisk, where there's gonna be a whole community of people who are getting pulled over a lot more, who are getting harassed a lot more by law enforcement.
Yeah, I think we've seen it a little bit in the past, like when Trump first took office. I know just from like personal experiences and just kind of hearing from folks in the community that, like, especially by the state fairgrounds and stuff, and in the summer when things get really busy over there, there was a time, certain time period that police and immigration like actors would be there at like a gas station, like right across from the fairgrounds, and be like waiting for people to show up in trucks ready to go to work and question them, ask about their immigration status. They'd pull them
Blatantly
over.
racial profiling.
Really?
They're just looking for groups of workers that look like they're Latino or they're from another country. And if they're in the back of the truck, they have like hand tools and stuff like that. They can just easily just go up to them, and that's what they did. Wow. We had people say, like, be careful, don't go to this gas station because it's dangerous. It's dangerous for your well-being to go there.
And how absolutely disgusting that is even what police officers are being used for, and they continue to have bloated budgets, and now we're building a new police station. It's like, what are we doing? What is the point? And also, I know some of these police officers who grew up in Iowa. I would not trust them babysitting a pencil, let alone handling an issue as intricate and as important as protecting immigrant rights.
Yeah, I think about the varietal, and I realize this is, stereotyping, but the varietal of white man that goes into law enforcement, like, no thank you. Just no thank you.
My absolute nightmare in gym class as a career. Like the dudes who would target you with dodgeballs.
With the dodgeball, yes, 100%.
And just go way too hard in gym class. Those are the people that we are trusting to patrol the streets and will do what they're trained to do, which isn't just. It's not just.
Well, and this goes into, and this is a totally different conversation, but when we talk about defunding the police, like, this is what we're talking about. It's like, the police can handle crimes. Do not make them handle mental health. Do not make them handle immigration. Like, that's not what they signed on for. It's let cops do crime, and, let's get specialty people for the other stuff.
And like Gabe was talking about, those were ICE agents. But the problem is that the line between the two is sort of intentionally crossed. And we've got local law enforcement in Iowa who was trying to tell the Republicans at the State House that they didn't want this bill to happen. So we've got theoretically allies in law enforcement who are saying this is not our job. We actually need to work. Like, we've got victims of crime that we serve at our organization whose future immigration legal status depends on them working with local police. And so when we've got the Iowa legislature passing bills that are going to set up this wall between local police and victims of crime, that doesn't serve anyone.
Right.
And so I remember during the times that Gabe was talking about the ICE agents that were engaged in this like blatant racial profiling along 235. We have pictures of them wearing these bulletproof vests that say police ICE. But if you zoom in, you can see that the word ICE is blackened out with a black magic marker. And so they're actively presenting themselves as police because they know that in immigrant and refugee communities and all our communities, to some extent, people do rely on the local cops for safety and for, especially, like I said, for victims of crime, this avenue to get access to immigration relief. And the federal immigration laws have been used as a way to instill fear and drive fear, just like the politicians have done. Like, again, we go back to this fear, and we know that when immigrant communities are afraid, the people who benefit are the ones that have power and have been known to abuse their power.
Right. It's a good time for a heavy sigh. Shit is bleak.
You asked earlier, Liz, how people can help in this
how
moment.
can people help?
So if the governor hasn't signed the law, which we don't know, right?
We don't.
Like, if she hasn't, folks can be contacting her office.
Okay.
I don't know. She'll listen. I mean, we don't have any indication to believe that she's going to veto this law because of the way she's been cozying up to Governor Abbott and sending troops to the border and DeSantis and all the things.
Really wild, because when you consider Texas and Iowa, you wouldn't necessarily say same thing.
No.
Like, I really need people to understand that immigrants, refugees are vital to Iowa's community. They bring so much to the culture. They participate in the workforce. They're invaluable. They are a part of the community, and it sucks that some people don't understand that and instead choose fear and act on that.
Yeah. And we touched on earlier before we hit record and we've touched on this before, on the idea of Iowa nice, which is I'm still learning about as someone who moved here, from a faraway land of New York. But it's based on what I know about Iowa nice, this doesn't seem to fit into that.
It's complicated, like all things, right? Like, I grew up in Iowa too. I took a hiatus and then came back sort of kicking and screaming almost 20 years ago. But it is an identity that people glom onto. And it's not just Iowa. There's like Nebraska nice. There's Minnesota nice. But this idea of hospitality and welcome and supporting your neighbors and things like that in its best sense. And I think however, when you ask people who are being targeted and minoritized by these laws, by these bills, the truth is something different. And we start then to see sort of the hypocrisy of the identity of Iowa Nice and the fact that it might be great what Robert Ray did 30, what's the math, 50.
Oh my goodness, I
Long
think that
time
was in
ago.
the 70s
I want to
by
say
now.
I want to say 50 years ago.
50
yeah.
years ago. But at this point, if we actually look and see what compare and contrast to the reality of Iowa now, it's like this is not, we can't rest on our laurels and be like, that guy did something great 50 years ago.
Yeah.
We have to look at what we're doing now and where we want to be in 50 years. And the fact is that if Iowa is going to have a prosperous, healthy future, we need immigrants and refugees.
Absolutely.
We need clean air and we need clean water. We need the rights of everyone respected. And otherwise, we're going to continue to lose population.
Yes.
We're going to continue to pollute our air and water. And our small towns are going to die because businesses are going to dry up and go away. And there's going to be no point in anyone living here or moving here.
Absolutely.
Right.
Not to.
And we already
that note.
see that. We already see people. I know I'm almost 30 and proud of it. But a lot of my friends who grew up in Iowa are gone. They see no reason to come back. They see the way that the LGBTQ community, the immigrant community is treated here, and they want no part of it.
Yep.
Which is unfortunate because those are like my brightest, best, like kindest, hardest friends who would love to come back to Iowa. But it's become a place that they don't recognize anymore because it's been so fueled by this hate and this fear and, I'm sorry, incompetent leadership.
Absolutely.
Incompetent.
Yep.
I mean, and you can't discount the Trump effect on all of this. Like so much of this, like hate and vitriol and all of that, started during the 2015 campaign trail and has just increased since then.
When people see a public figure, especially someone who was elected president and very well could be the
Still
president
feels like a
again,
fever
which
dream.
I am mentally detached when I say that. Someone like that is telling people that it's okay to speak like that, to think like that, to be aggressive, to be violent, to be hateful towards people who aren't like them. And I'm every day. It's exhausting.
It is exhausting.
And I can't even imagine what it's like for people who are actually affected by these bills. I'm just an Iowan I'm not affected by bills like that directly.
Sure.
So I'm privileged enough to be on the other side of it, but I'm so frustrated that the state that I know and love is
Absolutely.
this right now.
Well, you mentioned that, immigrants are vital to Iowa as a state. I mean, they're vital everywhere. If this has gone through, if this is happening, and we have a sudden the immigrants are leaving because they can't be here because of it being illegal. What are the consequences of that? What happens to the landscape of Iowa?
Well, there's been some studies in the last few years that show that as it relates to the population, the census, those kind of numbers, immigrants and refugees are fueling rural communities. They are fighting back. I'm 40. They're fighting back against the brain drain that has plagued Iowa since I was growing up, since you were growing up. This is not a new thing. People have been fleeing our state. Young people have been fleeing our state for decades. And so when you look at the impact of that, and we've done some messaging work lately because we know that immigrants are the future of Iowa. And we know that we've got to figure out how to bring Iowans along to support immigrants because our future depends on it. And what we learned in that messaging is that Iowans are older and whiter and more conservative and more racist than our counterparts.
Fun!
Shocking.
Right. But regardless, we've got to figure out how to talk to them. We can't rely on just like mobilizing young people or mobilizing immigrant rights folks. We've got to mobilize suburban moms and people in Dubuque and people all around the state, because if we lose, our rural communities are dead.
Right.
I grew up in Mount Pleasant, and our largest employer, similar to Perry, Tyson just announced that their plant is closing. The largest employer in my town, the Bluebird Bus Company, closed, and that town was decimated, lost population. You know, they went from the stoplights on Main Street going from green, yellow, and red to just blinking red.
Oh.
Because they lost population, and the community isn't the same, and that's what happens when we create an atmosphere where workers are treated like crap, where immigrants are treated like crap, and where businesses get to run roughshod over our communities and pollute our land and water. And so the idea is that that we as Iowans can have a better future for everyone, but we need to work at it. And you know, Trump was the result of decades of intentional efforts. I don't think it was a one-off thing, right?
No.
And Democrats in Iowa, when it comes to immigrants, haven't really helped. In fact, yesterday, 3 Democrats voted in favor of that bill, and 1 Republican voted against it. So Democrats haven't figured out how to talk about this issue either, because of the same reason I mentioned earlier, is that politicians have always beat up on immigrants, no matter what party they're from. And Democrats in Iowa, we've got some supporters, some allies certainly, but I wouldn't say we have any champions. People who show up consistently. We were seeing this video the other day in, I think it was Arizona state legislature. One of the representatives, elected officials, got up and said, point of order on use of the term illegal, because they were using that term in the floor debate in Arizona. And she said, this is an extremely offensive term. We shouldn't be using it. And if we, imagine if we had something like that in Iowa.
Yeah.
We just don't. We have.
They do that when they mention Trump in debate.
They use illegal then? What was that?
No, they call that move when they're debating and stuff like that. If they mention Trump, then they say, "Hey, calm down now." They call that. And it's like, we can't. This is nothing to do with the bill. Don't talk about this stuff.
Oh gosh.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
As if everything isn't intersectionally related. And this
like
isn't
the
a
opposite.
holistic issue
It's like
touching
the-
everything.
It's like anti-woke. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's like-
God forbid, right? Oh,
So we've got work to do, I guess. And,
yes,
and
we do.
We, immigrant rights groups are figuring out a plan for a legal strategy, because, you know, in other states, when similar things have happened, like this law, they sue the state, and this is like the Supreme Court stuff I'm getting text messages, because it's changing constantly, evidently, the decision about whether this type of law can go into effect or not. Is one thing. And then the other thing that we're going to be doing, because the reality is this law currently is set to go into effect July 1st.
Okay.
And if it does, then we need all hands on deck, because we will be building a system to protect each other. Communities all around the state will come together and build networks of mutual aid, of rapid response, to be able to support people who are racially profiled, discriminated against, who are ripped apart from their families, who are unjustly detained and deported, all of that. So that's what's coming down the pipe for us.
Okay. So mutual aid is going to be super important in this one.
Probably. It was in the Trump years. We had rapid response networks and community response teams built all across the state. We had networks where people could all call and report, you know, hey, ICE is at the QT on 2nd in Des Moines. And so, yeah, don't go. So that's the kind of future. But we're also thinking 20 years in the future, too.
Right.
Because that's what we should have been doing that 20 years ago. So anyway, so it's short-term strategy, kind of medium-term and long-term.
Okay.
And how can is there any way that people can find the Iowa Migrant Movement for Justice online? Any way that we can stay up to date on any initiatives coming up? Any ways for people to donate?
Yeah.
All of that, yeah.
Our website, our social media. We're really active on Facebook right now. We're trying to open up our accounts again on TikTok and Instagram. We're having some technical difficulties on that right now, but for now, Facebook is the best kind of social media for us. And then our website, iowammj.org. You can donate on there, become a member. If you look on some of our posts, we do have rapid response groups, and we post like WhatsApp groups to kind of keep people informed for
Nice.
some of the actions that we're kind of doing. As well, if you sign up, become a member, you'll be included in our email list as well, where we send out all those same action alerts, where we can like message, your representatives, and we'll do a thing for Kim Reynolds, and then just get all the info coming up for when we do some of these community meetings, mutual aid, or just, registration drives and stuff, because we're going to be doing stuff like that in the future too.
Great.
I think that would be the most Iowa nice thing to do, is to band together and support the people who live in our state who need extra support right now. Facebook, that's Iowa MMJ. The website is iowammj.org. Please go visit. Please participate however you can. What I've found in kind of being online and talking to people in Iowa, it's everyone, that's a big everyone, but a lot of people want to do the right thing. A lot of people want to help. They just don't know how.
Yes.
So really, we're going to spell it out as easy as possible for you. Once again, iowammj.org. You can donate, get updates, volunteer, resources, news, events, shop, and please just, I know there's a lot of other like really bad shit happening at the Capitol. This is a very important thing to focus on in that basket of shit
For
that they're
Iowa's
doing.
future, just overall, because it's, I know tons of young people leaving, how we mentioned earlier, and the immigrants they're here, they're building houses, they're building neighborhoods out in the middle of nowhere where other people aren't going.
Yeah.
They're being contracted by employers coming from different states as well. And all these people are immigrants, and they're essentially building the state because we need the labor. And if they leave, and if all, the young people leave, we're going to have nothing. So it's very important.
It's super
Right?
important.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. Did you have one more? Oh, that was it. There were a couple of bills that died. The eligibility for public assistance, expanded definition of human smuggling. Again, dead, but we're never going to just let these fall. These
What did you say
ideas are
earlier?
not dead.
Exactly. Bad ideas can survive.
Employer verification of legal residency, that would have been Senate File 108. That would have prohibited Iowa employers from knowingly employing an unauthorized alien employee. Even the terminology used is dehumanizing.
Yeah.
But yeah, stay on top of this. We're going to stay involved. We're going to be following the Iowa migrant movement for justice, and doing what we can to amplify whatever comes that we can help with.
Yep. We'll keep talking about this and what's going on at the Capitol. Now it's time to plug ourselves. If you enjoy this show, if you enjoy Iowa We Can Do Better, please think about donating to our Venmo, Liz from Iowa.
At Liz from Iowa. It says Lizzie McGuire because I don't know why. I look like I have a Lizzie McGuire obsession.
You do, actually, with the sticker, and
But
it's fine.
beyond that, at Liz from Iowa, we do want to keep producing content and producing wonderful podcasts with wonderful guests. So if you want to plug there you go.
Thank you. And Erica and Gabriel, thank you so much for joining us. This has been great. This has been a super awesome conversation.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to plug before we sign off?
Thanks for having us. It's good. I do. Yeah. I find myself often thinking, man, like why didn't we start this 20 years ago? So we've got a long fight. I know that, but we're not going anywhere, and refuse to let the other side win.
Yeah. The best time to start was 20 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right now.
Yeah. So thank you for having us as well. That's everything from me. Just being a part of this conversation and continuing to talk to people about these things is really, I think, what's most important right now.
Yep.
And just realizing that Iowans are not one type of person. There is a great combination of all types of backgrounds and experiences, and Iowa is better for it. Mm-hmm. So let's keep pushing to make this a more inclusive space. We have only things to gain from including our neighbors and getting to know one another and supporting one another.
Absolutely.
And on that note, thank you for joining us. Be sure to subscribe to us on all your favorite podcast channels and check us out on YouTube.
And check us out on YouTube. Yeah. all those
Amplified
things.
DSM, we love you. We'll be back soon. And thank you again, Gabriel and Erica.
Thanks.
This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates and central Iowa companies.
amplified.